When you think of a version of Windows, many come to mind, such as Windows 95 for its UI improvements, or Windows 11 for being an absolute piece of crap, or 1.01, or I could go on. However, one version of Windows is, well, not really the most significant. It was quite important in retrospective because all versions of Windows can likely trace their roots back to it, Windows 2000. So given that it was arguably the base for all modern versions of Windows, how usable is Windows 2000 in 2026? That's a good question, so let's get started. So first, we need some background. In 1996, Windows NT 4.0 was completed, bringing the NT line up to speed with Windows 95. Yes, there was a new shell thing for Windows NT 3.51, but that was an experimental add-on. And Microsoft started development on the next version of Windows basically immediately. Okay, well, Windows was split up between the 9X and NT lines, but Microsoft was already developing the next releases for both product lines, codenamed Memphis for the 9X line, and, well, the next version of Windows NT didn't have a code name. It was given the preliminary name of Windows NT 5.0. The reason why Windows 2000 did not have a code name was because part of Microsoft's leadership that was involved in Windows 2000's development, Jim Olchin, did not really like code names. As a side note, the reason for the Windows 2000 name was because there was a internal debate between Jim Olchin and Bill Gates over the final name, because Olchin also wanted to have the final product called Windows 2000 to modernize the NT line's naming. In the end, Olchin won out on this debate, hence why it's called 2000. Builds of the technology included in 2000, such as the distributed technology services preview, I'm probably spelling that wrong, was compiled in October of 1996, around the same time that the first known builds of Windows 2000 were being compiled. And after development, Windows 2000 was released to manufacturing in late 1999 and to the general public in February of 2000. A review from CNET on the OS by Christopher Lindquist said that it was a fairly solid OS, albeit if you wanted to do a lot more internet or gaming stuff, you would want to wait for Windows Millennium Edition. Kind of ironic. However, there were supposedly issues. According to ZDNet writer Mary Jo Foley, an internal memo said that Windows 2000 had over 63,000 defects. Given that Windows 2000 was named such because it was supposed to be the most modern and secure and whatnot operating system, this was a bit of a thing. This memo also said that development on the next versions of Windows, Whistler, and Blackcomb would not be able to properly get on their way until these bugs were fixed. Microsoft did not really take to this article very lightly, evident by the fact that they did not let Foley into a lot of press insights for a number of years after this. However, after this, Windows 2000 was used by people who didn't have a good time with Windows Millennium Edition and was superseded by Windows XP in 2001. Support for Windows 2000 started to dwindle over the later half of the 2000s, and support for it ended in July of 2010. But anyway, time to look at the computer we're going to be using for this. Like last year, it's going to be the Dell Dimension 3000 with a Intel Pentium 4, a socket T1, around 512 megabytes of RAM, and integrated graphics. This PC originally shipped with Windows XP, but due to sharing drivers with a Dell Optiplex model that supported 2000, you can install Windows 2000 on this Dell Dimension, and it works quite well. But anyway, let's use the OS now. I should also note, I'm not going to go into any bundled programs with the exception of Pinball, which was added because there wasn't really anything new in that end with Windows 2000, and it's the same story for XP. Some popular programs from the time include Word 2000, Office 2000 in general, Winamp, AutoCAD 2000, I guess, Photoshop 6, while other programs continue to go on, like Netscape 6. As for programs that either still support or were the last versions of programs to run on 2000, ImageBird and Clamwin from the previous video still support it, fairly self-explanatory, in addition to 7-Zip. Hypercam 2 continued to support the OS at least until 2007. I don't know when support for it was dropped, but one of the final versions of VLC Media Player to support Windows 2000 was 1.0, released in 2009. Even still, it doesn't really play videos all that well on a computer like this. Even stuff in 720p, sometimes it'll get stuck at points, although if it's a lower quality or lower res video, it'll probably play alright. This version of iTunes, that I don't remember what version it is, was the last to support, or one of the last to support 2000, while versions of Winamp, as late as at least 5.57, will work on 2000, albeit it'll throw a lot of shell 1232 errors, unlike on XP and later. In terms of web browsers, Firefox 12 was the last version of Firefox to support Windows 2000, while Opera 12.02 was the last version of that browser to support 2000. Adobe Reader 9 is the last version of Adobe Reader to support Windows 2000. It should also be noted that OpenOffice.org 3.3 was the last version of OpenOffice to support Windows 2000, but I didn't showcase it here because I forgot. But it should also be noted that you can expand the compatibility by using a kernel extension such as kernel X. But that's beyond the scope of this video. Again, you should be very careful when browsing the internet because Windows 2000 is basically a security vulnerability foam pit, and hackers like to target Windows 2000. It's not an immediate when you boot it up kind of thing, but be very careful and limit a Windows 2000 system's internet connectivity. When it comes to gaming, Windows 2000 is kind of awkward because it wasn't intended to be used for gaming, however games will work on it. First up, Bejeweled, the original. This time opted for a time trial because I think that the timed mode has better music, and to put it simply, this is still a very fun game. There is a reason why it is considered one of the best games, or one of the greatest games of all time, so yeah. Next up is Diablo 2. For a brief recap, I couldn't get this game working in my Windows 2000 and 2025 video, however, since then, I figured out that by patching the game, it solves the problem that I had in the 2025 video. Meaning that, yeah, I can show this for once. I didn't really have any aims for this showcasing this, however, my character can summon skeletons. Like Railroad Tycoon 2, this is a game that I would like to play more of on my own time, because I think it'd be very fun, and yeah. As for other stuff, Age of Empires is something that will work on this, and I also found a funny thing. This also isn't like a campaign thing, it's just because I want to showcase more of the stuff. It was a 95 game, but it works basically quite well on 2000, maybe because it was polished by Microsoft, but I can't be 100% sure. Last but not least, Half-Life. This time, the camera cooperated a bit better, I guess, but I don't really have anything to say. It's Half-Life, it's just a hazard course again. Anyway, it should be noted that some games will, it should be noted that some games may not cooperate correctly on NT. Need for Speed 2 is something I didn't think would run, but surprisingly does, albeit with an error related to low storage, while Fallout will just refuse to install at all. And so that's that. To conclude, Windows 2000 is like Windows 98. It depends on if you need the internet or not on its usability. If you need the internet, don't use it at all. At that point, you might as well just use XP, which isn't the best idea, but at least that has Supermium and stuff. But yeah, if you want gaming, you also probably shouldn't really use it. You're probably better off with either 98 or XP, because that's just the way 2000 is. Being sandwiched between those two versions of Windows, it's fun to look back at, but it doesn't really have much of a purpose in usability today, so I'll just leave it at that. Do you agree? Is there something that 2000 is actually very much usable for today? Do you still use Windows 2000? Do you remember anything from 2000 back in the day? Is there something I could do to improve my content? If you have anything to say, feel free to let me know down below in the comments section through email or through my Discord server, and feel free to give this video a like. But that'll be it for this video. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.